Welcome back to Python programming from beginner to programmer. In this video segment, we want to learn about how we can use some of the string and aggregate SQL functions to manipulate the data columns in SQL database. So this is a brief list and pretty much cover all the string functions that are available in SQLite. So it goes from length, calculating the length, we have that in Python as well, just len of a string column. So all the x's here are the column names, right? So just replace it with, for example, name or account code like this would do. So a bit like pandas column functions, where they would apply the length to each element in the row of a column. These SQL string functions also do the same. All right, so they perform their operations. If it's length, then calculate the length of each string in a row within a column and returns a new column. So when we do this, for example, if we say length of name, we could think of it as having a new virtual column called length of name inserted into the row. Although it's not actually done in the database, we can think of it as being present in the table, so that when we say select length of name, we will actually get back one column of numbers where each row contains the number of characters of that account name within that column. So we can also take trim, where as we experience in Python programming, it's really useful to remove both sides of empty spaces like tabs and spaces of a string. We can just do left trim or right trim accordingly. Sometimes it's useful, although for me, I would just do a trim every time just to make sure that there are no tricky spaces that are invisible. It's really dangerous, because when you do string equate, x space will not be the same as x, right? So that's very tricky, and then visually we also cannot detect it. We can convert the string to upper cases only, lower cases only. So that's exactly spelled the same manner as Python. Remember also that in SQL, the casing of the function names are not significant. So we could have spelled it in lowercase, but in Python it's mandatory, it's case sensitive. It has to be in lowercase. So substring means to extract a portion of a string. This is quite common in many languages, and so SQL chooses to say substring. In Python, we know we could use the slicing square bracket of starting character position colon ending position plus one. So here, however, is to say what is the string starting at which position, and notice that SQL is very much one base. We have row number one and column number one, not zero. So likewise here, the counting is based on first character 1, 2, 3, a bit like Excel's VBA, right? Visual Basic. And then we supply the number of characters desired rather than the ending character position. Then we have find, right? Find the position, the character position of occurrence of y within x. So in string, is it in string? So for Python's string, we have string dot find, right? We can do that, but it's spelled in string here. And we have replaced the substring occurring at position x, all right, with string r. So replace all, or rather, it is all occurrences of s with string r happening within x. So if we have ABC and we replace that column name, comma, A to Z, then it becomes ZBC. So all occurrences of A will be replaced with R. And this operator, double vertical bar, is really not something I like, because double vertical bar tends to suggest some sort of OR, Boolean OR operations. But here it refers to append the string y to the right side, the end of x. So that's a bit like concatenation of strings. In Python, we use x plus y, right? Here, SQLite requires x double vertical bar y. A little bit confusing actually, but that's where you have to take special care of. So all these are string functions, where some of them take string and give you string, like trim, ltrim, upper, lower, substring, replace, and x double vertical bar y. Some of them take string and return integer, like length, in string, because it returns the position of y within x. Yeah. Okay. So be very careful of the return type of the function. Next up, we want to also just get exposed to the list of aggregate function. So these aggregate functions, basically, as we mentioned earlier on, or we learned earlier on in the video segments, that aggregate functions take many numbers and convert them into one real number. So the many number is supplied here in terms of the column. So we have average of column X, count of column X, max of column X, min column X, total and sum are the same. So they mean the same thing. Add up all the numbers in column X. So all these convert all the numbers in the column into a single number. So be very careful, because in a way, this is reducing the dimension, right? One column becomes one scalar value. And we also have string aggregation function, which is to combine strings into single string, much like the behavior of plus in pandas group by, right? We noticed last time in the videos that when we group by and the column unique values happen to be string type, we can actually sum them, we can add them together, and they end up behaving like string plus string, being concatenated together. In SQL, because SQL is an older language, it has a different syntax. So we have to use group concat, not double vertical bar. So this would go along with a sort of well with group by and other string functions, string operations. Next is an example. But before we go there, let me also introduce this rather very useful and nifty knowledge about what cursor provides. We understand by now, or I hope you understand by now, that all the read and write operations towards the database must be done via cursor, right? We know that we send commands through it and we read back data from it through the cursor. The cursor itself not only supports buffering of the data and everything, all the complicated stuff, it also has a very useful property called dot description. So we simply say cur dot description, and we are able to, for example, here, you can see here, we can just query the dot description property without the brackets. So it's a property, not a function call. So dot description, give me a description of what? Well, it will return a tuple of tuples, a bit like querying the schema of the table. So whatever read back operation we have done immediately before the query of the dot description will be sort of deposited into this variable. So what does this describe? It returns a tuple of many tuples, as many tuples, inner tuples, as there are number of columns. Okay. And each column, right, all the information will be provided in the inner tuple. What we are interested in is the first element of the inner tuple, which gives us the column name.